Hello, am I audible to everybody? I could see many MBA students in the class, but this class is actually for the BBA students. Did you all get the link to the class? Actually, this was scheduled for BBA. In my calendar, the class was for BBA. I'll just check once. Give me a minute. It's MP12. MP12 is the subject of BBA students, isn't it? For you, it is MP 103. 103 or 105? It is 103. Isn't it, Prabha? For MBA, it is 103. The subject code. Yes. So this is, you can see over here, it is MP12, managerial economics, isn't it? So MP12 is for BBA students. So I'm just clarifying this point because this class is for BBA students, and it is like it will be a repetition for the MBA students, because the MBA students have already done this topic, isn't it? Modern theory, Ricardian theory of rent, and other things. Prabha, you were there in the last class, so you must be knowing. Kelvin, you were also there. Dijesh, I think you were also there. So this is just like a revision for you all, if you feel like, okay? Because this is actually for the BBA students. Alright? Is my point clear? Can you see in the link? It is MP12. So I prepared according to the BBA students. Alright? Okay. So for you people, we can discuss the modern theory of rent today. Okay? We didn't discuss this in the last class. Isn't it? Prabha? Prabha? Are you there? I'm not getting any response from you. Siraj, Ram, Kelvin, Dijesh, Pradesh. Okay, okay. So Pradesh, you were there in the last class? Okay. Alright, so we can do the topic which we didn't do. Alright, Sriraj. So welcome to class. We'll be doing this modern theory of rent today. Alright. So can you just repeat for me what we discussed in the last class, because these topics are interrelated. So can you just tell me what is rent, what is quasi rent, and what was this Ricardian theory of rent? Can you discuss those things with me? Kelvin, Dijesh, Pradesh, can you tell? Prabha, can you just tell me what is rent? Yeah, I'm waiting for the answer. Yes, it is the reward from the production factor called land. So if we are the owner, we will be getting the rent, and if we are the tenant, we will be paying the rent. Okay? And rent is not exclusively for the land. It can be for other things as well. Other things like machinery, plant. Okay? It can be for any of these, isn't it? Then the next thing which we discussed was the quasi rent. Quasi rent means something that is almost equal to the rent. Hello. So what is quasi rent? Quasi rent is something that is almost like a rent. It is a kind of rent which the owner earns when there is scarcity of one particular factor. Okay, so that is called the quasi rent. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So quasi rent is the rent which is it is like quasi rent is the rent which is yes, it is something that is not like it's not the normal rent. It is when like in the business you have abnormal profits. So the abnormal rent which is earned due to scarcity of one factor of production is called the quasi rent. Okay, so we don't include it as the economic rent. We treat it as the quasi rent. So like for example, if there is a shortage of if there is yeah, the best example is like if suppose there is a particular event in a particular city. Suppose there is World Cup final in Australia, in Adelaide, Australia. So for this particular event, the crowd will be pouring in, and because of this the hotels will increase their prices, they will increase their rents. So because of the increased rents and due to the scarcity of that availability of yes peak season and to the non availability of the space, people will pay the increased rent and the owner will make abnormal profit. So that part of the rent that is abnormal or that is we can say super normal, that is called the quasi rent. Okay, like for the peak season the airfares hike, like for this time the we can say the for hill stations, at this point of time the airfare is really very high. Okay, okay, so now we will discuss, and after this we discuss the Ricardian theory of rent. We discussed Ricardian theory in the last class, so we can just revise that. Like you can see this is a diagram which is showing different pieces of land, plot A, B, C and D with different types of fertilities, Azad Nagar, Tarapur and C and D. Prabha, I am just revising and then I will be going to the new thing, that is modern theory of rent. Okay. So like for example, there are I'm discussing the Ricardian theory, I'm just repeating it. Like there are different pieces of land A, B, C and D. Now there can be two situations in these in this type of theory. One is rent in extensive cultivation and the other is rent in intensive cultivation. So suppose we talk about extensive cultivation. So what will happen is, obviously everybody will prefer land A because its productivity is higher. So people will take land A, and once the land A is extensively cultivated, means there is no further scope of cultivation in land A, people will go to plot B, then they will go to plot B. Okay, now the productivity on plot B is 30 quintals. So there is a difference of 5 quintals over here. So because of this difference of 5 quintals, the A is having an advantage of 5 quintals. So suppose it is able to sell 5 quintals at 20 rupees per quintal. So they are going to get 100 rupees for that. So there is extra 100 which A is earning over B. Okay. So that is the Ricardian theory under extensive cultivation. You can see a tenant will be prepared to pay up to 5 quintals of wheat in order to get in a plot in the A zone, or take B equally quality land free of charge. Okay. Now suppose the B quality land, now if B is fully exhausted, land B is fully exhausted, means all the a lot of cultivation is done on land B. So now people will go to land C. So what will happen? 1 minute. So people will now focus on land C, and because of this the rent of land A will further increase, because the land A is the land which is most in demand because of its high fertility. It is the most fertile plot of land. So because of this the rent of A is going to further increase. So because of the scarcity of space in A, people are preferring other pieces of land, and the benefit of that is going to A. Because of its advantage, it is earning more and more. Okay. Then rent in intensive cultivation. Okay, so now we come to, actually I'm not little well today, so that is why I'm just taking breaks in between. So now we go to rent in intensive cultivation. Now what will happen in intensive cultivation? Intensive cultivation, we will not treat A, B, C and D as the different pieces of land. We will treat A, B, C and D at different doses of labor and capital. Okay, so like set A of labor is giving 35 quintals, set B is giving 30 quintals, set C is giving 25 quintals and D is giving 20 quintals. So now what will happen is, everybody will want to have set A of labor. So again, because of its greater productivity, this set A will have an advantage over the other sets. Okay. Now, what is this no rent or marginal rent? Like if we compare it in the graphical form. So like 20 quintal is the minimum production which every piece of land is giving. Okay. So it's giving extra 5 quintals, B is giving extra 10 quintals and A is giving extra 15 quintals. So this is their advantage. So because of this reason, we call this piece of land, that is land D, the land where there is very least production, the least of all. So we will call that piece of land as the no rent or marginal land. Okay, it's called the marginal land. So it's it is just covering the expenses and it is not generating any revenue for the owner. We can just say that. So this 20 quintal is the no rent land, the minimum production land. So what were the like the shortcomings of the theory? The first and the foremost was that there is nothing as such no rent land. There cannot be anything as like this. Alright. So this was the main part. Now we can go to the main topic for today, which we have to discuss, that is the modern theory of rent. Okay. So because that Ricardian theory of rent, that is believed to be the traditional theory of rent, and because of its disadvantages or its shortcomings, a new theory has been defined, and this theory is known as the modern theory of rent. Okay. So we can just start with this. Like so far the things are clear to you? What about others? Okay, what about others? There are still one or two people. Sriraj, is this your first class? You told so. I think this is your first class. So you might be having a little problem in understanding because you know these topics were discussed in the last class. We discussed this Ricardian theory, quasi rent, and what is rent. What this all was discussed in the last class in detail. So this was the topic that was left out. Actually, this was planned for BBA. So I was expecting BBA students. So I would have explained all this in detail. But anyways, since this was already done, so I just repeated it. Okay. So now we can go to the modern theory of rent. 1 minute. So modern theory of rent does not confine itself to the reward of only land as a factor of production. Okay, this was like that Ricardian theory. Everything was centered around the piece of land, its productivity. Everything was focused on that. But in this modern theory, we assume, and that is a very practical assumption, that rent is not the only land is not the only thing that will give us rent. So rent in modern sense can arise in respect of any factor of production and not merely land. So rent is a surplus. So in the sense of surplus, rent is a payment in excess of transfer earnings. I think I explained to you this transfer earnings. If you remember what are transfer earnings, I use this term. You remember anybody? No? Okay, transfer earnings is like when you use the same factor of production for, yes, it's like opportunity cost only. Like opportunity cost is the cost of producing the next best alternative. Okay, using the same set of resources. What next best we can produce, that is opportunity cost. Or we can say what we let go. Like having a 10 rupee note, we can either eat an ice cream or we can have pulki. So what we do, like if we eat pulki, so the opportunity cost will be the cost of the ice cream because we are letting it go as an option. Okay, so transfer earnings is when you use your factor of production for a different purpose. Like a same piece of land is there, so it can be used for apple plantation 1 year. Apple plantation is very expensive, means it fetches a lot of revenue, and in the next year it can be used for wheat. So that is transfer earnings. When we will use it for wheat, we are going to get maybe less earnings. So that is transfer earnings. Transferring the factor of production for another use. Okay. So transfer earnings mean the amount of money which any particular unit could earn in its next best alternative use. So suppose a piece of land under cotton is yielding 150 and its next best use is wheat which fetches 100. So the transfer earnings are 100 and therefore in its present value it is giving us a surplus of 50. Alright, like 100 is the minimum which we are going to get when we will use it for wheat. So the difference between the two, that is 50, is the surplus. So we can also define the transfer earnings as the minimum sum which must be paid for a unit of a factor of production in order to induce it to satisfy in its present use or employment. Just 1 minute. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Sorry, there was someone at my door. Sri Raj, you are asking about the cost of production. You are talking with reference to transfer earning, like what will happen to the cost of production in case of transfer earnings, in case it's a case of that. So like this is, we can say it is a hypothetical discussion, and we can just for our purpose of discussion we can assume that the cost of production will remain the same. Okay, for our discussion we can assume it, and otherwise the in this case actually there will be some difference. The cost of manufacturing cotton and wheat will vary, so that could be the there could be transfer earnings. Okay. So we can also define the transfer earnings as the minimum sum which must be paid for a unit of a factor of production in order to induce it to satisfy in its present use or employment. In the above example, a sum of rupees 100 at least must be paid for the land under cotton in order to retain it under cotton, otherwise it will shift to wheat, which is its next best alternative use, which it can fetch 100. Okay, so it's like the minimum cost which we must pay in order to retain a particular production pattern. That is the meaning of a transfer running. But that is the more simpler one. Okay, the first which we have discussed. So you can understand it that way only. So we can say that this piece of land is earning 150. Prabha, this is the best example. It can be for piece of land only. Okay, it can be for a machinery also. It can be for a shop also. Like if the shop has been rent out, if it's a, we can say if it's a normal shop like a grocery shop. So a grocery shop owner may just pay 2000 rupees as rent for the month. And now if we give the same piece of land, same shop to a restaurant owner, he may pay us 5000. So this is so transfer running in this case is 3000. Okay. 2000 is the minimum rent which we are going to get under any circumstances, and 3000 is that extra that we are getting because of giving it to the restaurant owner. So this is applicable to every factor of production. Alright. Now how rent arises. Now let's see from like rent, what is rent, and like from where does it originate, that we have to discuss. Rent originates because of the scarcity of the land. Land that is available to us is scarce. I'm not talking about individual ownership of the land. I am talking about the piece of land that has been given by God, nature. Like the nature has given us small piece of land, we can say, that is fertile. So because of this, there is scarcity of land. Now, supply may be perfectly elastic, which can be shown as a horizontal straight line. You can see this is perfectly elastic, means actually it should be perfectly inelastic, isn't it? It's inelastic. We are not able to increase the supply. Anna, it's written wrong over there. Okay, it's inelastic. You can see the supply is constant at SS and the demand is fluctuating. It is starting at D, it's going up to D dash, then it's coming down, it's coming even down. So this is in case of inelasticity of land. Now when we can say that the land is little elastic, it's elastic. We can change it or we can vary its availability to some extent. So this is SS. So you can see the graph is not a straight line this time. It is a little, it's a slanting line. So this shows that it is elastic. So over here again, it's D, D dash, D double dash. Now this is a case of supply of land being elastic, perfectly elastic. Okay, so over here this is the demand and this is the supply, this is the E is the rent. So basically what we are trying to study is that the rent arises because of the scarcity of land. So over here you can see when the land is perfectly inelastic, then what is happening is the rent is continuously changing. From E it is going to E dash, it is going to E double dash, means it is rising up when the demand is going up and when it is coming down when the demand is going down. Okay, and when it is elastic, then the fluctuations are not so much in proportion. This is E, this is E dash, this is E double dash. So we can see that the variation is not, there's not a lot of gap between the variations. The gaps are quite similar in distance. Over here they are little different. It is more, it is a little less. So that is there. The next is this one. So in this case, the rent is fixed because the supply of land is perfectly inelastic. Means for any quantity of demand we are able to supply land. So in that case the rent will also remain fixed because we have ample of land with us. Did you understand the diagrams, everyone? Okay. So in the three situations or conditions, rent is the surplus over transfer earnings. Rent as a surplus over transfer earnings will be different. So if the supply is absolutely inelastic, the transfer earning is zero because land cannot be transferred to any use. Okay, so the supply of land is fixed and it has only one use, whether it is used or not. So in this case, the entire income from land is surplus and hence it is rent. When the supply is inelastic, it's absolutely inelastic. There are no variations that can be done. So in this case, the entire income is surplus. When the supply of land is perfectly elastic, there will be no surplus, and the actual earnings and transfer earnings will be equal when it is perfectly elastic. So for example, for an individual firm or farmer, the supply of land is perfectly elastic. Means they can vary it according to the need, we can say. If they need more land, they can occupy more. If they need less, they can dispose of the extra part. There will be no surplus in this case because no one is having an advantage over the other because the supply of land is perfectly elastic. Suppose the supply is elastic but not perfectly elastic, then a part of the income from land is rent. Okay, and it is not rent. Just a second. Carl, okay. So we have seen the three conditions. Now these three conditions have been shown in the diagrams which are given over here. So we have to see where are those diagrams. These are the diagrams. Okay. So for this we need to first study that graph explanation that is given. Okay. So I think this is wrong. It should be in the diagrams given above. 33.3 diagram was above. Let me just check. Yes, 33.3 diagram was this one. This is 33.4 and this is 33.5. So that is a wrong word written over there. So let's just discuss this. We have already discussed, but let's just discuss from the point of view of the diagram. So DD is the demand curve and SS a vertical straight line, the first one, in which the supply of land was perfectly inelastic. Okay, so they intersect at E. So here OS is the quantity of the land used. So OR is equal to SE, that is the rent per unit, and the total earnings at are OSER. Now let us see this first graph. Yes, OS is the piece of land that is used and OR is the rent. Okay, so the total earning for at any point of demand is ORENS for this one, this point E double dash. For point E it is ORES, and for the third one it is OR dash E dash S. Alright. So that is the explanation to this one, and similar explanation is for this one also. In this case, can you tell me what is the total earning in second case? Total earning of the owner. Total earning means the rectangular portion. Yes, total earning will be OR dash E dash M dash. Okay, and for this case it will be OREM, and for the other one it will be OR dash E dash M dash. So this is the last one, in which the supply of land is perfectly elastic. So that we have already discussed. It's very simple. You can just skip this. Okay, now what is the last figure? It is 33.6. So in this figure, SS supply curve is somewhat elastic. The supply curve SS is somewhat elastic. It cuts the DD demand curve at E. DD is the demand curve. It is cutting it at E. So in this case, OM is the land used and the rent per unit is OR. OR is the rent. So the total earnings are OMER and the transfer earnings are OMES. Okay, so if we will deduct these two figures from each other, we are going to get the transfer earnings. So that is represented by this shaded portion. RSE, that is the surplus or the rent. Now, why is this so? Because this is like this OS. This is the minimum rent which we are going to get. Okay, this is the minimum cost, minimum value of this piece of land, OS, and we are actually getting OR. So OR is above the OS, so that is the transfer earning, or rather it is the surplus or the rent. Alright. Clear? Yeah, this is simple. That theory was little difficult, the Ricardian theory. Now surplus and other factors too. It should be borne in mind that the above analysis with regard to rent as surplus over transfer earnings is applicable not only to the share of land but also to the shares of other factors, example wages, interest and profits. So this applies to all cases where the supply of a factor is less than perfectly elastic. So in such cases, a part of present earnings is the transfer earnings and the remainder is economic rent. Okay, so like we can have surplus in the other factors also. This is like very much clear. Like suppose if there is a tailor shop and they are owing a tailoring machine. Now when they are using the machine at their own shop, like suppose there is one single tailor, he is using the machine at his own shop and he is getting his earning is around 2000, like he's stitching the clothes and selling it, so that is 2000. Now suppose he rents out his machine to somebody else and that person is giving him 3000, so he is having extra 1000. So this 1000 is the rent which he is getting for his machine. Okay, that is the 1000 is the surplus or the rent. Yeah, surplus or the rent we can say, because 2000 is the minimum which he was getting. It was the supportive price. Now there is a comparison between Ricardian theory and the modern theory. So we have studied the two main theories, that is Ricardian and modern. Now can you tell me the differences between the two? Can you just think about it yourself, the difference between the two theories? Can you just write them? Yeah, Prabha, law of diminishing marginal returns is applied. In which law, Prabha? In which one? Can you just tell me which one? In Ricardian, yes. So now we can just read them. In Ricardo's theory, the surplus is due to the superiority of the land in question over the marginal one. Okay, it was because of the productivity. So in this case, whatever rent was being earned, that was not because of any human effort. That was the, like we can say, the nature of the soil itself, the nature of the crop itself. Because of that we earned. So and the superiority may be due to either quality of the land or a better situation. Yeah, location is also important. Also, both theories of rent have the same concept of land. That is, it is a natural factor rather than man-made factor like capital. But then where is the difference between the two? Means they both are treating the land as the natural factor. Both the theories, Ricardo also and modern theory also. Now, the difference between the two lies in this, that while Ricardo takes agricultural land subject to the law of diminishing marginal returns, and the modern economists on the other hand do not confine the concept of rent to agricultural land only. Okay, so they were not considering this rent only to their land. They were including the other factors as well. Ricardian theory was specifically based on land. So as we have said earlier, rent can arise in the sense of surplus in the case of other factors of production also, and even in a situation of increasing returns. So rent represents the opportunity cost of transfer earning. In this sense, rent is of a more general nature applicable to all factors. So that is why it is said it is leading species of large genus. That is, land rent is not a separate class by itself, it is only a prominent example of its type. Okay, like for every factor of production there can be surplus. I gave the example of that machinery, sewing machine. It can be anything, not only land. It can be a building, it can also be capital. If you invest the capital in one running business, then you are likely to earn more interest, like that is your rent, that is your earning, that is your surplus. the interest which you are getting from your money holder. Okay, so you are the money lender. So that means the rent is present in every surplus that we are getting or we are earning. Alright, so this is done. Just give me a minute. I'm looking for something. I just want you to watch a video. Okay, so I'll show you a video which is going to discuss the Ricardian theory of rent. Okay, you can just watch it, and I'm showing it to you because yeah, Prabha, that is more practical because we don't have only one factor of production in present time, so that's pretty much more practical. Okay.
Today we look
Just
at
watch
Ricardo
this video,
on rent.
everyone.
The Ricardian theory of rent can be explained in a partial equilibrium context and given a neoclassical interpretation. Output of land, corn or food, and on the horizontal axis we're going to put inputs into land, which is going to be labor. We're also going to array our land from the highest quality down to the lowest quality. Then we successively apply units of labor to land. So the first unit of labor is applied to the highest quality of land, and it produces a lot of output. The second unit of labor is applied to land of a little bit lower quality. It produces a little bit less output. The third unit of labor is applied, and so forth. Now suppose that we have L units of labor in total. Then by the successively applying units of labor to different qualities of land, the total amount of output will be equal to the area under the output curve up until the quantity of labor, L. Now let's focus on the quantity of output which is produced by the marginal laborer, by the laborer who is working on the lowest quality land. That's given by the height of the output curve at the quantity of labor, L. Now here's the key to the model. The wage of all the laborers is going to be determined by the output of the marginal labor. The wage is going to be determined by the amount of output produced by the laborer who is working on the lowest quality land. Now, why is this? Well, this is true because labor is a uniform good. It's the same quality everywhere, and because of competition. So imagine that this were not true. Suppose that the laborers on the highest quality land were earning a lot more than the laborers on the marginal quality of land. In that case, these laborers, the ones on the marginal quality of land, who are just as good as those laborers who are working on different land, they would go to the landlord and they would say, hey, hire us instead. We're willing to work for a lower wage than you're paying your current workers. The landlord, of course, would agree. And through this process of competition, wages are going to be driven down to the output level produced by the marginal laborer. That means that total wages are equal to the output of the marginal labor times the total quantity of labor, L, or this area which I've shown in the graph here. And that means that the rent is what is left over. The rent is the total output after total wages have been paid. That's the Ricardian theory of rent given a neoclassical spin. To really understand the genius of the theory and also the craziness, you have to understand how the theory fit within the context of the classical theory of value. In fact, the Ricardian theory was meant to fill a gaping hole in the classical theory of value. In the classical theory, the value of all reproducible goods comes from labor. So they allowed for a few exceptions for non-reproducible works of art, antiques, and so forth. But for everything else, they wanted to argue that the relative price of any two goods was determined by the amount of labor in those two goods. Now there's one obvious objection. What about capital? It's clear that goods are created using both labor and machines. How can we say that the price depends upon labor alone when obviously you've got to pay for the machines as well? And Ricardo and the classicals had an answer for this. They said that capital is really congealed labor. It's simply labor which was earlier in time, which was applied earlier in time. Now, they did allow for an interest payment. So what they argued was that in equilibrium, profit, the return to capital, was really interest and really just a payment for time. So the payment for capital really could be boiled down to two things: the labor which was in the capital and the fact that that labor was paid earlier in time gave rise to an interest payment. Ricardo calculated interest could be at most, let's say, 7%. So Stigler says Ricardo has a 93% labor theory of value. So we can basically ignore the capital part because most of that is just congealed labor anyway. The part of that which isn't is interest, and that's small. Still, we have another gaping hole in the labor theory of value, and that's land. Wages. So Ricardo has reestablished the labor theory of value, or the capital part, land, farmed by the marginal laborer. As we showed earlier, the output from that piece of land will be equal to the wage. In other words, on the marginal land, the rent is zero. The wage exhausts.
Hello? There is some problem with the video. It's not properly streaming. And moreover, it's not talking only about the Ricardian theory of rent, but it's talking about other things as well, which we don't need, like theory value of labor and all that. That is all not needed. So we can just wind up the class over here because there seems to be some signal problem. The video is not streaming. So we'll meet in the next class, and the next class for you will be on, as per my timetable, it should be Saturday, okay? But if you get the link, then you please be there, okay? Yeah, thank you so much. Bye, good night. Thanks for your time, everybody. Go through the text once, means your course content, so that you can have a understanding of the topic. This is very important. After the class only, if you go through your text once, then what will happen is the things will get imprinted in your mind. So this is how we used to study. When the teacher taught us in the school, we used to go home and read the topic once. So this is how the things got said, and this is very important in case of economics because the topics are very much interrelated. So that is a very good practice if you can follow. Alright? Okay, thank you everybody. Thanks for your time. Good night. Take care of yourself. Bye. Good night. See you all in next class.